Virgo, April begins with a kind of momentum you can't fully plan for. And honestly, that's the part that challenges you the most. You're someone who likes to prepare, to understand how things work, to feel grounded because you can see where things are going. But right now, that foundation is shifting. Not because anything is going wrong, but because things are moving faster. Decisions come up quicker. Situations develop before you've had time to fully process them. And that creates tension. There's a strong Aries influence behind all of this, bringing direct, fast-moving energy that doesn't leave much room for overthinking. For you, that doesn't just show up externally. It creates an inner restlessness, because your instinct is to understand first and act second. But this month flips that pattern, and that leads to one key realization. You don't need to understand everything to make a good decision. In your daily life, this shows up in small but noticeable ways. Things don't go exactly as planned. Conversations take unexpected turns. Decisions appear before you've had time to analyze every detail. And that can feel uncomfortable, but it's also where your growth begins. In love, this energy becomes very clear. If you're in a relationship, you start noticing what no longer feels quite right. Not necessarily big issues, but small patterns that keep repeating. Things you may have overlooked before become harder to ignore. You become more aware of how your partner responds, how conversations unfold, and what remains unspoken. And instead of overthinking it, you bring it up, more directly than usual, without over-preparing. That shifts the dynamic. There's more honesty, more clarity, but also less room to avoid things. This can deepen your connection if both of you are willing to meet each other openly, but it can also reveal differences that have been there for a while. The key point is this: you're no longer willing to accept what doesn't feel right to you. If you're single, your perception changes too. You're not just thinking about what makes sense on paper anymore. You're feeling into it more. You can tell more quickly whether something actually has depth. At the same time, things around you move faster. Conversations happen more easily. Connections form more quickly. But that's exactly why it's important not to rush your decisions. Not everything that feels intense is truly stable. In your work life, April becomes more concrete. You start noticing shifts in structure, even in areas that used to feel stable. Maybe new responsibilities come up, maybe priorities change, or maybe you realize you want to approach things differently. These changes didn't appear overnight, but now they're impossible to ignore. And that brings up an important question. Do you stay with what you know, or adjust to what's evolving? Financially, your perspective sharpens. You notice more quickly where effort and reward are out of balance, and your desire to work more efficiently grows, not out of pressure, but because you want clarity. A central theme this month is control. You're used to analyzing, organizing, optimizing, but April shows you that control doesn't mean managing every detail. Sometimes it means choosing where to focus your attention and where to let things unfold. If you try to control everything, it creates pressure. But if you prioritize, you regain clarity. And that clarity gives you back the sense of stability you've been looking for. Emotionally, something shifts too. You're not just reacting logically anymore, you're tuning into what actually feels right. And that may lead you to make decisions that aren't perfectly thought through, but still feel right. Around the middle of the month, these themes intensify. Situations become clearer, conversations more direct, and you may feel like you need to respond quickly. But this is where it matters most. Not to fall back into old patterns. You don't need to have everything figured out in advance. You just need to know what feels right for you. Another important theme is expectations. You notice more quickly when you're doing something, just because it's expected of you. And at the same time, you feel a stronger need to question that. This can create tension, especially if people are used to seeing you as reliable and adaptable. But you're starting to shift, not loudly, but clearly. You're choosing more consciously where you show up and where you don't. Your relationship with time changes too. You become more aware of where your energy is going. Things that don't move you forward stand out more and start to lose importance. So you begin to adjust your routines, more focus, clearer decisions, and that brings you a sense of calm. Your relationship with mistakes also evolves. You tend to be hard on yourself. You want to get things right. But this month shows you that perfection isn't always the goal. Growth isn't linear, and sometimes small adjustments matter more than perfectly planned steps. That takes pressure off and gives you more flexibility. Your approach to responsibility becomes clearer too. You've been carrying a lot, sometimes more than you needed to, but now you start to separate what's actually yours and what isn't. That shift alone can feel relieving, and it changes how you show up. Another shift happens around pace. You're used to being thorough, but now you're realizing that not every situation requires that level of depth. Sometimes a clear and quick decision is more effective than a perfect analysis. That may feel unfamiliar, but it moves you forward. As the month goes on, you'll notice something subtle but important. You're changing. You react differently. You decide differently. And you use your energy more consciously. These changes aren't loud, but they're real. Toward the end of the month, things begin to settle. Not necessarily around you, but within you. You've sorted things out internally. You know better what you want, and you move through your days with more clarity and intention. Virgo, this month isn't challenging you because you're doing something wrong. It's challenging you because you're learning to redefine control, not as something that holds everything together, but as something that guides what truly matters. And that's exactly where your growth is. If reflections like this resonate with you and you want to use them for yourself, feel free to subscribe to the channel.